end after covering everything like you recommend here. I just the discussions afterwards really affirmed them like applying the concepts we discussed. That was just get them up out of their desks was worthwhile.
Yeah,
So
and that's the reason why I have those simulations to get them up and moving. So in unit 2, we've got a full simulation. In unit 3, there is there's two different activities you can do. There's that links activity or some sort of production activity in the very beginning, and then the marshmallow towers. Did either of you guys do the marshmallow towers activity? Okay. Um, if you had a semester and you're running out of time, I can see why you don't do it, but it's a cool activity. Take a look at it. I'm going to let me see if I actually did. Well, I can look it up later. I made a new. I try to make every one of my activities have a PowerPoint and a worksheet that goes with it. And I know the Marshmallow Towers has its worksheet. It's a push-up machine that I have a new worksheet. If I make anything new, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it inside our course underneath in that unit. So in unit 2, right, I'll a little further, I'll put that there. Eventually I'll make a new zip folder and put the giant zip folder with everything, but I don't want you guys to go, I don't want to download this thing and try to figure out what's new and what's not new. So if you see me making a video on YouTube where I'm like, hey, I got a new activity, here's the worksheet, all that stuff you guys obviously have access to. Make sure you take a look in this course. I'll make sure to put those in there. So long story short, I have a new push-up machine worksheet, same activity, but a new worksheet that's way better than the old one that's there. The reason why I'm bringing this up is, I mean, every year I'm running out of time, like we're talking about, and every year I think to myself, do I really want to do that activity? Like, it's not essential that I do the production activity. It is for student motivation. It's essential. Like, you're going to get more out of kids by doing an activity with them than you would be by just pushing content. So you got to put that into the schedule. For unit 3, for example, the idea of long run production costs and economies of scale, that is literally a video and 10 minutes in class. Good enough. Maybe even 5 minutes in class. Be like, hey, go watch Clifford's video or do, if you have my worksheets, go do this worksheet. Covered it. Boom, we're out. So I mean, when it comes to finding time, either flip or kind of plan ahead, but definitely don't cut out those activities. I think that's kind of the spice, so to speak, of the course that makes students enjoy it, right? Yeah, they can eat it, but I'd rather have a meal that's good instead of just eating something. And they're more likely, that's the other thing. If you got kids leaving and you're not going to see them for 4 months, the only way to get students to take a test in 4 months from now is they're excited about that test, that they like the course. Do you know what I'm saying? If it's all push, then when it's time to take the test and they're doing it 4 months from now, they'll be like, okay, whatever, I'm not going to study. And they're not really into it. So there's that activity here. The push-up machine is in unit 5. I've got a candy simulation in unit 4. I know this is things I've just mentioned. I have not done my video for the unit 6 activities. I'm actually working on a few other things too with externalities, but I'm going to post that soon, well before you ever get there. So you can see kind of some of the activities I do for that unit. I'm always running out of time in unit 6 anyways, so I don't have that many activities there. But yeah. So back to the question, how do you not run out of time? Well, damn it. How do you deal with scarcity? That's a real question. I mean, that's what this class is, and that's what we're doing. We're dealing with scarcity. You got limited time. What are you going to do? Flip. And the big one is know where you can speed up and know where you can slow down. Like I mentioned before, when I was a first-year teacher, exactly where I was when you are, I'd spend way too much time on the production possibilities curve. I'd be like, okay, draw the production possibilities curve. Now show me the shift, and they draw it. Now draw the production possibilities curve. Now show me this shift, and they draw it. Don't have the kids doing that at all. Draw it one time. That's it. Here's the production possibilities curve. And then all the examples you do, just do it up on the screen. Like, here, how about this? What's going to happen? And they tell their partner, and then you go over the answers. And then that's all they need to do. They don't need to be drawing it over and over again. Now, there are some times where you can't do that, and you got to drill and kill. Let's go through really quickly each one of the units and say, where's the drill and kill spots? When I say that, I'm saying where's someone, like you taught it on Tuesday, and you're practicing it on Wednesday, like almost the entire day. Where are you doing that in unit 1? Just yell it out. Let's go. We got this.
Comparative advantage.
Comparative advantage. Where are you doing it in unit 2? I'd argue there's 2 of them. I mean, it's all important, but the biggest one, obviously, in unit 2.
Elasticity.
I do elasticity and supply and demand. So the kids learn elasticity. Don't just be like, oh, here's the equation. Let's move on. You're like, all right, practice. All right, now practice. Okay, practice. So the thing about elasticity, and this is something that's great about the class, is there's 4 of them, and one student knows one, they got it all. Because once you understand this, then you kind of understand the others. So, students need to practice calculating the elasticity of demand coefficient. You focus on demand, and then when they do that for a little bit, then you can teach supply and cross price and income a lot faster. And of course, the other one is good old fashioned supply and demand, having kids practice drawing those shifts. The one thing I tell new teachers, which you're not, is whatever you do, students will do. So if you're drawing sloppy graphs, they're going to draw sloppy graphs. And I have a hard time doing this now because, I see the graphs in my head. So I don't feel like I'll draw them really quick. Like, hey, the price goes up, quantity goes up. But you got to tell yourself, okay, I'm drawing it properly. Demand to the right, price goes up, quantity goes up. Give an arrow and always draw it really nice. So kids, that's what they'll do when it comes time to the actual test. Because sloppy, I was a table leader. Sloppy graphs are the worst. Like it just, you want to give the kid points, but they just missed labeling D1. And you're just like, I can't help you, kid. You're not finishing it off. Real quick, let's finish this off. Unit 3, where are you going to slow down? Drill and kill. I didn't know it was going to be interactive, Jacob. Damn it. Why can't I sit and watch it? Dang it.
Profit maximization.
Yeah, I would argue, so the topics, the big ones, I think, are the cost curves, right? So students feel comfortable identifying average total cost, average variable cost, average fixed cost, and seeing those boxes. The great thing about micro, and especially your second year, is you're going to start seeing the boxes. When you first see it, you just see like curves. You're like, I don't know what's going on here. When you start seeing boxes, like that's the fixed cost, that's the variable cost, that's the total cost, and you don't even need them in front of you. You can just start seeing them. That's when this class gets really good. So I think cost curves is big, and obviously perfect competition. They make it 3.7, like this is one topic, but this is really like 3. This is perfect competition, drawing it, the graph, like side-by-side graphs, just being able to draw that, being able to show what happens in the long run, and being able to do the whole thing over again with a chart. And so I give you a chart and number of output, and you have to figure out how many units to produce and calculate the profit off the chart. So really 3.7 is really 3 different things students have to do. And you got to practice. Okay, practice again, practice again. Now, if you're trying to figure out where do I need to practice, just look at my PowerPoint. If my PowerPoint has something on there once, like economies of scale, long run production costs, it has literally the graph on there once. It shows economies of scale, constant returns, and diseconomies of scale, done. If you look at my PowerPoint, if the graph there once, then you know that's something that's not necessarily unimportant, but it's not something students have to practice a lot with or draw a bunch of times. If you see something in there over and over again, I'm like, okay, practice this, now practice this, now practice this, then you'll see, okay, that's where you got to slow down. All right, how about and it could be different for you than me, but what about unit 4? Where do you have to drill and kill?
Monopoly graphing.
Yeah, the graph for a monopoly, they got to draw, and there's 2 different versions, profit and loss, really, they didn't know. What's the other one on this one? Come on, Andrew, you got this.
Drill and kill.
Yeah. I'll give you a hint. They'll put it on the free response from time to time, and it's not a graph.
Will you do oligopoly and game theory?
Yeah. A game theory is one of those ones you got to try it again. Okay, try it again and try it again. And I found the only way kids really learn it is by doing it. They just got to keep practicing over and over again. So you're going to definitely do some drill and kill on that one. Monopolist competition, not so much. You're going to introduce monopolist competition. Here's what the graph looks like in the long run, and you can skip pretty darn quick, especially if kids really understand monopolies. If they understand monopoly, and you're like, it's kind of like a monopoly, except it's making no profit. And the kids are like, okay, at that point. In Unit 5, and you experience this, Unit 5 is not hard, but for some reason, students struggle with Unit 5 because we've switched gears. Because now all of a sudden we're going back to supply and demand, except now we're looking at wage, and the firms are the ones who are demanding labor, and it messes kids up. I don't have it with you this year, but I know it happened with me every single year. Students were like, what's going on? You're like, just because we've been doing 3 units of cost curves and now, or 2 units of cost curves, it's hard for students to kind of bounce back out of it. The trick is to tell them that. Okay, this unit is different. I'm telling you right now, it's different. The only thing I think that is drill and kill here, you tell me, what do you guys think? What's a drill and kill in Unit 5? interactive show.
Profit maximizing behavior.
Darn right. The idea of how many workers to hire. Try it again. Okay, here's some new chart. Try it again. And they have to do it twice, once with the graph, once with the chart. So that process for perfect competition, hiring workers, is what students are going to drill and kill on that one. Last unit. Unit 6 feels the most like social science. It's mostly definitions, right? You're talking about in public goods, the definition. You're talking about regulating monopolies. That is a little bit of a graphs there. And inequality has the 3 different types of taxes. But really, the only thing that's hard in this unit at all is externalities. So they're drawing externalities, then being able to spot the 4 different types, and then be able to draw them on their own. So that's really the only drill and kill there is externalities. Everything else kind of seems and feels easy. There is another graph. In fact, let's back up. Watch this. Let's see how good you guys are. Quiz time. All right, what's the graph in unit 1? Let's go. We got to go fast. There's only one.
Production possibilities.
Production possibilities curve. What's the graph in unit 2?
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. Now give me 5 variations of supply and demand. When I say variations, means different things the tests could ask them about. So regular supply and demand market. Good. Give me another one.
The changes in supply and demand.
Yeah. Okay. So supply and demand, and if it shifts, like a regular one shift. Great. Give me 4 more different things that you might see with supply and demand that students have to be able to do. I wasn't planning on quizzing you, but I am. Woo! This is fun. You already know. I mean, you think you don't know. Like, I'm not sure. I'll give you a hint. What kind of regulations might you see? When does the government ever get involved inside a market?
Taxes and subsidies.
Taxes, subsidies. I'll put it with that one. So a regular one-time shift, you got a tax. How about when they mess with the price? The government messes with the price. What do you got?
Yep. Ceilings and floors.
Ceilings and floors. Great. And another one is the idea of trade and the idea of having a world price and having a really large consumer surplus. So they're learning one graph in unit 2, supply and demand, but they're learning a bunch of different, I don't want to say variations because it's all the same darn graph, but they're all like different situations with that one graph. Okay, let's stay with graphs. What's the graph in unit 3?
Cost curves.
Cost curves, showing the different cost curves, the 4 per unit cost curves. And then the big one is what?
Oh, perfect competition.
Perfect competition, side-by-side graphs, right? Being able to show a market and a firm, show that box of profit, show a loss, or that kind of stuff. So unit 3 is, where students start drawing those cost curves. There's a couple other graphs they need to see in there, but you don't need to spend like much time on them because they're not one students have to draw. There's what's called the production function that shows, the relationship between total product and the marginal product. And there's also economies of scale, but there's a difference between like graphs you got to know and mess with, and then graphs that might be on the test, like in a multiple choice question. All right, there's 2 graphs in unit 4. We got to move. We got other things to do. Give me them. Let's go.
Monopoly graph.
And
payoff matrix.
that one's not a graph, but yeah, that's a skill for sure. The other one is monopolist competition, right? And then the third one down in that one is the idea of price discriminating monopoly as well. So, but the point is, what I'm trying to show you here, I'm not sure if this is helping, but the students introduced to one graph showing where the economy, like how does economy look? What's scarcity look like? Now we're going to mess with supply and demand, right? The market. Now we're going into supply and demand. So in this one, now we're looking, instead of just, a market, we're looking at one firm in the market. And then we keep doing that in unit 4, except looking at different types of markets, monopolies, monopolist competition, and a price discriminating monopoly. And then we're taking supply and demand over again, except here in unit 5, there's 2 main graphs here. Just give me one of them. Unit 5.
Profit maximizing.
Profit maximizing, side-by-side graphs again, except for hiring workers. And the other one?
Factor supply and factor demand.
Yeah, just a regular market. Yeah, sure. I mean,
Yeah.
It's just supply and demand over again. What's the last one?
The monopsony.
Uh-huh.
Did you get to monopsony, Greta, last year?
I did not.
Yeah. And you didn't need to. Basically, at the end of the year, I tell students, like, there's graphs you need to know, and then these side graphs. And so I think differentiating is important. What you don't want is this. You don't want kids, oh, you didn't teach me this thing called monopoly. I'm going to spend all my time on a monopoly. And then then they missed the more important one, the perfect competition graph they need in Unit 5. I was in the 8th annual conference 2 weeks ago, and I sat in the chief reader gives this report and says, okay, here's what we saw, here's what we, what changes are coming. And I listened very carefully in that, probably too carefully, but he basically goes, he's talking about perfect competition. He's like, this is important that students understand this because, there's these other graphs that, and he used some professory term. He's like, that are marginal and not as significant, like a monopsony. And when he said that, I was like, ooh, I don't think this chief reader thinks monopsonies are a big deal. And I don't know if that means anything, but what it tells me is it's not going to be a free response question, at least not a major free response question anytime soon. So the point being, we're talking about all these graphs, and some of them are way more important than other ones. Last one, let's finish it off. What's the other graph here?
The externalities.
Externalities, the 4 different types of externalities. There's also another one called the Lorenz curve, but students don't need to actually draw it. So the Lorenz curve is another graph. Again, I'm not sure where I'm going with all this. I'm not sure this is what you guys wanted. But this is what I would talk to a year 1 teacher about, is kind of like recapping in their brain, because a new teacher would have no clue. A new teacher like Unit 5, I don't know. Unit 5 is whatever. I have no clue. What other questions? You can talk about specific content if you want. Is there any other questions really quick about pacing? Is there a pacing question you have for me?
Can I ask real quick?
Yeah.
If you had, so I'm in the unique situation here where I see students every day for a semester. So I still see them for 90 class blocks, which is, I find, it was still rushed to teach micro, but it was still more comfortable than I perhaps experienced with other AP classes. And our school is very much about authentic assessments, which perhaps is not necessarily what the AP exam always is. Is if you had time, was there any type of assessment or any type of application you would want students to do?
If I had time, there's of course, if I had time, I never had time. When you say authentic assessment, let's define that so I'm on the same page as you on exactly. So can you give me an example of an authentic assessment?
Absolutely. So for instance, one thing I did was like most areas of the country, the price of housing has gone up astronomically on the seacoast in New Hampshire. So I had students look at like why that is. So that,
Yeah.
there's supply and demand factors in there, and they had to come up with solutions.
Yeah. I mean, that's first of all, that's what a course should be. Let's be honest. We should all take a step back and say, what this should be is a semester of teaching this academic crap that we do, and then a semester of what's the application in real life? Why does this stuff matter? And unfortunately, the more, and that's the second one's the more important one, and that's the first one we kind of cut out in the academic world. No doubt about it, working in that stuff is key. I'll tell you the things I don't do, then I'll tell you things I would do. I would never, um, I would never spend class time doing kind of research on that kind of stuff. If it's going to be done, it's going to be done on the kids' own time. You can be in groups, and I want you to do research a particular topic. Also, I don't give, and I would never give kids a lot of time to present their stuff to the class. If you are going to do some sort of current events, make it quick and short, and have it set up as part of the rubric. It's like it needs to be under this amount of time, because when kids teach kids, it's like the blind leading the blind. Sometimes it's interesting, but in the end, it ends up being a time waster. And you go, let's have presentations, and kids present what they learned, and then what would have taken you one day takes you 3 days, and they're like, oh shoot. So it's a balancing act between what's on the AP test and what really matters, and what really matters is the connection to the world. So what I would do is some sort of current events Friday where you tell the kids, all right, you sign up, you get people in groups of 3, no more than 3, so 2s and 3s, no more than that. And you can sign up on Friday for our current events. When you have a current event Friday, I'll remind you on Monday. And then on Friday, you're going to present to the class. You have no more than 4 minutes to present something that's been going on in the world that we've talked about over the last 3 weeks. So whatever it is, you got to find something, and I want your partner, you and your partner, to present that. And then have some sort of rubric. I need to make a rubric for such a thing. I never did it because I never had time. I'm gonna write that down. Rubric for current event. Did you do something like this, by the way, Greta? Sounds like you're the kind of teacher that would.
I didn't. I honestly I've been thinking about incorporating something like this into like my instead of doing a final exam because I found I had a lot of kids who were not prepared for the AP test take it just to get out of taking the final.
Yeah.
And I really I don't love that they do that, but I really want to try and find something authentic like this to give
Yeah.
them as a final project.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And they do
yeah,
that after the AP test, right? You're talking about having them do it after
yes,
the AP test? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally.
yes.
You do anything you want. You do personal finance after the AP test. The,
Hmm.
the problem is this. So here's how, okay. I don't know if I told the story in the videos, but I'm gonna tell you right now. It was in 2008, and the student comes to my classroom, and it's October, and she goes, "My grandma hates your guts," and I'm like, "Oh shoot, I don't know who your grandma is. I don't know what happened." And she goes, apparently there's all these things happening in the housing market right now. It was 2007. There's all these things happening in the housing market right now, and you haven't taught anything about it. And I'm just like, like, and so she's like, my grandma hates the fact that I'm in econ class and we're not talking about these things. And I was like, yeah, but we're in micro. Like I got to teach you a monopoly graph right now. I don't have time to go and explain what's going on. And quite frankly, I was still trying to figure it out. The whole world was trying to figure out what was happening in some ways. So the point is, I think there's a balance there. The way I sleep at night, knowing that I still do this academic stuff, is if students are interested in economics, they're more likely to learn economics their entire life. So I don't have, I have them for a semester or for a year, but that's not it for their learning. And if I get them excited about, oh, economics is pretty cool, like I really enjoyed that class in high school, they're going to learn as time moves on. Maybe not the academic stuff in the college board or in college, but they'll learn more things through life. And that's what matters, I think, in the end, is having a desire to learn things. And it also helps me to sleep at night knowing that I'm wasting their time because they're never going to draw a perfect competition ever again. I mean, I run my own business. I've never drawn my marginal cost curve. So we are neck deep in theory in this class, but I would never make the argument it's a waste because the way it makes students think is a strategy that they need in life. Like the whole idea of marginal analysis and the way you attack a problem and the problem solving side of this course, I think that all matters. I don't do and never had time for current events. I think it's great. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, and I definitely wouldn't make it worth a lot of points because students, great, businesses follow profits. Like if there's profits being made, businesses will go follow that. Students will follow grades. So if you make something worth a lot of grades, they're going to put all their energy in that. And if they put their energy into this presentation you're doing, then they might not have the energy to be doing, realizing, no, for the test at least, we want to get you college credit. Like that's why you're in the class. Let's have you do the stuff that you need to, which is the academic stuff. I don't think it's bad also to shy away or to be honest about it and say, listen, what I'm teaching you is very academic. These cost curves, no one really uses them in real life, but the idea people use all the time. You're always doing this as a business owner. I'm always thinking about the additional revenue, additional costs of any product or anything that I'm doing. I might not be drawing graphs, but I'm using those concepts. So I'm not sure if that answers your question about authentic assessment. I think it is hard to create something that is not on the AP test and then assess them on that and spend time on it when in the end, none of it is from a AP test standpoint valuable at all. Like there'll never be opinion on the AP test. There'll never be, news. They'll never say, okay, what happened? What was the externality that happened last summer in Alaska? Like there's no questions like that. So, and there'll never be a question that has kids have to pull that kind of knowledge either. So anything you do is extra and just know that going into it. Did I answer that question, Andrew? Kind of.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the
No.
biggest problem in the course. By far, it's the biggest problem. I think the trick is to always work it in yourself. Be like, so you're teaching about monopolies. Be like, you guys heard about the Amazon thing, and you spend 1 minute talking about real life. Okay, now let's go draw some graphs. And I think that's a better way of doing it. And just keeping your eye open in the news for econ. The best thing in the world, by far, the best thing in the world. I used to. I don't have a very long commute, but it just happened to be. I always listen to NPR on my drive home. And it just was so jam-packed. Like it was funny, you turn it on and NPR would just be giving the story of something I just talked about in class all the time. So go take a look at that, those podcasts or anything else, good ideas to find things to talk about what's happening in real life. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course, of course, of course. A new teacher, year one. Year one, I started feeling comfortable with the concepts. And year one, I started to recognize that this whole course is marginal analysis. That you start going like, oh, it's just marginal analysis again. Oh, it's just marginal analysis again. Oh, it's just marginal analysis again. I should mention it now. The chief reader said a couple changes and I don't know if I said this in the videos, but the AP test, when you have a worker, I don't have a question in front of me. Let me go pull a question so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So let's see here. Do I have released free response, micro release free exams? I don't have. Well, crap. I don't know if I got to pull up a 2024 one. Give me 2 seconds here. 2024 micro FRQ. So they changed the way that they're assessing these things. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. So the one that had the workers, which is neither of these. Okay. So this question had very few points where it said which worker, determine the profit maximizing number of workers for this firm, which is an easy question, right? It's marginal analysis. How many workers should this firm hire? And then it said explain using marginal analysis. That killed the kids because kids couldn't say, and I don't know the right answer. I don't know off the top of my head, but let's say it's 7 workers. They couldn't say 7 workers because the marginal revenue product equaled the marginal resource cost. Like that's what we train students on saying. That's how they get the points. That's how it's been for years. But now to get the point, the kids had to say 7 workers because marginal revenue product equals the marginal resource cost. And you wouldn't hire the 8th because the marginal resource cost of the 8th worker is greater than the marginal revenue they generate or something like that. So in other words, they had to say something about the worker you wouldn't hire to get the point. I don't think it's necessarily fair, but I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, kids can't say when the marginal revenue product is greater than the marginal resource cost, because that's happening for all the workers, right? So the first worker that's got marginal revenue product is greater than marginal resource cost. Next worker, the worker's generating more revenue than their cost. Next worker's generating more revenue than the cost. What they're trying to say is, okay, why wouldn't you hire the 7th? Because the marginal revenue product is less than the marginal resource cost. And so that's what they said for that point. That's just a change they made. It's something to tell your students. Tell them it came straight from Jacob Clifford and the chief reader. So when you teach that, drive that concept home. When they say explain using marginal analysis, just don't leave it at that. Fully explain. Okay, the marginal revenue product of the 6th worker is this. Marginal revenue product of the 7th worker is this. And just kind of think, go through that process. Did you guys hear about that, by the way? Or did you? Yeah. How'd your students do on these free responses, by the way? They do well?
They did okay.
Okay is good enough sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay for having a first-year teacher. So
Yeah.
they were
Sure.
they were fairly confident coming out of that test, I will say, which I felt really good about. They were like, it wasn't that bad. There was one free response that was really hard, but otherwise it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Well, I heard the multiple choice is super wordy, and that's kind of the problem is the wordiness of the questions. And that does suck when it's like kids understand the concept, but the question is messing them up. These were pretty good responses. The one thing that's good about micro is, actually all of AP Econ, macro too, is the free responses. We kind of know what's on the free responses. There's no major surprises. Like this is similar to a free response that's been offered in the past. And so it might ask a little wrinkle, but never something that's like, oh, you never asked this before. Now it's kicking everyone's butt. They're really great about asking the similar questions or working things in. These are good questions, I think, for the most part. This one was harder. I saw I don't know if they have it now. Actually, let's go look. It was on there. So you'll see when you get in the website. See, they have this. Take a look. It has the chief reader reporting. They'll have this here for this next year soon when they put this up. It's basically a PowerPoint that goes over, okay, nationally or globally, how many points do people get on which point, and it kind of gives you some information, things to watch out for. as a new teacher, you are trying to like swim, right? You're just like trying to swim and keep your head above water. Now that you're a year, getting 2 years in, then you start seeing this stuff, and that really kind of like fine tunes what you're teaching and how you're teaching it. So when you get a chance and these things pop up, jump on the chief reader's report and read over that and see exactly. It also like solidifies your knowledge. You'd be like, oh, now I really understand that question, what they're trying to do, and what kids did. I think it helps you as the teacher significantly. A new teacher couldn't do it. A year, 2 years in, like you understand enough to feel comfortable with that. I don't know what the question was, but I went off, didn't I? That's okay. Okay. Other questions. You got to have a content question for me. Come on, give me a good content question. We don't have to bust out a multiple choice question. We can if you want, but if there's something your students asked you last year and you're like, I don't know, and hopefully I know the answer because I might not. Has it just been too long ago? You're just like, whoof,
I think so.
a little
It's
bit.
still the summer.
It is still the summer. And I know that's actually, I really do appreciate you guys showing up and hanging out for this. I know that it is tough. That's why I want to give you as much as I can. Our next session will be in October. And please, from now till then, when you have questions, write them down. And I just want to be able to answer. Like, I never had this when I was a newer teacher. Like, I never was like, well, why is the marginal cost shaped that way? And I just never figured it out, or, it goes from there. I can tell you, I've used Chat GPT for all sorts of stuff, and it has been wrong so often, and it hallucinates so much. It's good because it can help you write a couple of questions, and they're good. But you make sure you read that stuff over, because a lot of times I don't know where it's pulling information from, but sometimes it's just bad. So it's a new problem with students and cheating, but at the same time, it's a good resources for teachers. Okay, more questions. What do you got? I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to do with the faculty meeting thing, where if no one asks any questions, then you guys get to go home early. But that's not what's happening here. Just joking. You guys, we can do anything you want. I just want to be able to answer any questions you have going into this year. I got one for you. I got a question for you. I made an argument, take it or leave it, on why you should do a hands-on simulation on day one. You don't have to do it, but I strongly believe in doing the Pearl Exchange as your first activity. Have either of you done that last year? Okay. Have you seen my video where I cover that and talk about that idea? So in August last year, there's a video, it's, first day activity. It explains how I do my first day. I have two students come up. I don't know if I talked about it in the videos, but I have these two students come up, and they basically negotiate the price of a cell phone. And then I have a whole class come up, half the class buyers, half the class sellers, and we do a version of the Pearl Exchange. Not drawing supply and demand, not explaining a bunch of concepts, just having students buy and selling from each other on day one. And so I spent a lot of time doing professional development with schools. And one of the things I always say is day one's purpose is to get students excited for day two. That's it. Like, no syllabus, none of that kind of stuff. It's all about getting students like, oh man, this class is different. I'm excited about this class. And if you do this activity and you watch that video, I posted it last July 31st. I looked this up the other day. July 31st, 2023 is when I posted that video. It's called First Day Activity, and it shows you exactly what I do in the classroom. If you teach macro, I know one of you teach macro, I made a new activity called Lego Towers, which is another cool activity you could potentially do on day one. Both of them are great. I'd still have students buy and sell from each other because, gosh, there's nothing more economics than buying and selling from someone. And there's a great aha moment in that activity as well that I won't ruin it for you. Greta, what questions do you have?
When you do those activities, do you ever find it difficult for students to buy into them the first few times?
No. Buy-in is my thing, I guess. I spend a lot of time talking about buy-in with students, or I tried to. I mean, to be honest, I've been out of the classroom since 2017. I started doing this stuff full time, and that's been really hard. I don't know if kids have changed. Some people told me that after COVID, kids changed a little bit on the social side. Like when you try and do activities, they're like, well, no, our job is to sit here because that's what we did during COVID. We sit and watch you teach us. I would definitely push against that on day one by doing this activity. So I think day one, you get students buying and selling from each other, you're more likely to get those kids interested in your activities. I used to tell my students this, like, you want hands-on activities. I want to do hands-on activities with you, but if you're not into them, then I won't do them. So you got to show me you're into them. In fact, ham it up. For this round, just ham it up. Pretend like you're having an amazing time. Do you know what I'm saying? And doing that kind of stuff with kids. That's what I miss the most in the classroom. You have no idea how awesome, how lucky you are being around teenagers. They keep you so young. The day, I mean, I have my own children, which is good, but the day I left the classroom, like I aged like 10 years and I didn't even notice like why, like I gained all this weight because before, like you walk around like in your classroom, you're burning calories. You don't even realize it. So don't ever leave. Don't ever leave the classroom, and don't become an administrator. But you get what I'm saying. You guys are awesome. You're lucky to have a class like this. Did you have a hard time getting your students excited about activities?
Couple times. I did a few of them through the FTE offers.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, there were a couple. But I also had a very small group. It was the first time the class had run, so it's
How
the
small?
students. So I had 11.
Ooh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
hard. 11's tough. 11's tough. It's doable. You can do all my activities with 11. You can't with down to 7. You start being like, let's go buy and sell. You bought from one person, like it's not much. Yeah.
But no, yeah, most of them are really successful. So I recommend it. Yeah.
Good. All right. Give me some more questions. Greta, you're up. You have to ask something.
Okay. I feel like a lot of kids had a lot of questions about stuff that didn't matter last year. Like they had a lot of questions about like what shifts PPFs, which that was like a 5-minute explanation. But
Yeah. So like, I see what you're saying. Like let's say there's a car producer and then now there's new robots that produce cars, but the other thing is pizza. But now there's more cars, so you can drive more pizza around. And since there's more cars, that means you can, delivery drivers can deliver pizzas faster, like that kind of stuff where students like start doing like tangential thoughts. There's a solution to that in this class. And you tell students, it's a Latin term called ceteris paribus, which you've heard, which means to hold everything else constant. For econ teachers, I want you to remember ceteris paribus is shut up. So, and don't tell them that. Don't tell them I told you this. But when a kid says something, what if like this? You go, ceteris paribus. In your head, you're saying shut up. But really what you're saying is hold everything else constant. That happens in this class a lot more. I noticed it happened a lot my first year because I'd get caught up like, well, I don't know. You're right. What would happen in that case? The answer is, who cares? Like the AP test is not going to ask a question that's that convoluted and be like, well, another example is this one. Like, okay, what's going to happen to demand and supply for pizza when the wage goes up, right? Students go, oh, well, the wage goes up. Well, there's two ways of thinking about it. If the wages go up, then people can go buy more pizzas. So demand goes up. Or you can say, well, wages go up, so that supply is going to decrease because that's a cost to firms. Either way, one of these things is going to happen. And that's why the AP test would never ask that question. What they'd say is this. They'd say, and this is what's good about it. And the same thing for macro. They have to ask you questions on a silver platter. The AP test will say, what'll happen in the market for milk if the wage for milkers increases, causing an increase in production costs? Like it's like supply. And it tells them so clearly that there's only one right answer. So that vague stuff, or that kid's going, well, wages could do this and could do that, starts, getting bad. Funny story, quick story. When I was doing a workshop, I do a workshop here in San Diego. We're doing the hands-on simulation stuff 2 weeks ago. And one of the ladies in there is from Honduras and was it Guatemala? Damn, it doesn't matter. So I had written a question where I said, what's going to happen? It was a macro question. What's going to happen in the economy when there's rolling blackouts causing a lot of shortage of electricity? My brain goes, this is going to mean less production because we can produce less stuff. Like that's what it says to me. And she goes, no, Jacob. She goes, it actually might increase demand. I'm like, increase demand? She goes, yeah. When electricity goes out, we all go out to eat. And I was like, damn, I didn't even think about that. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, like electricity goes out. I was going to make food in my own house. Now I'm going to go out to eat. And that gets people out there, and people out there increases consumer spending. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that's why the College Board doesn't ask questions like that. It's always very clear, just succinct. This is what's going to happen. So my advice to you, I know you didn't ask for advice, Greta, but I'll tell you, is when the kids start walking down those rabbit holes, you can be like, that's interesting, but that's not what we're going to see on the test. And I'll never ask you a question like that. It gets even worse with macro and like GDP and what counts and doesn't count, but you're going to see it here in this class for sure. Is that what you meant, by the way, about kids not sure how the production possibilities curve will shift?
Yeah, yeah. Like that was always the type of questions that I would get. Like the questions, like, you have those really, really smart kids that are
Yeah.
like, oh, this is one thing we didn't talk about a lot, but what if they ask that question? It's like, they're probably not, or
Yeah.
they might ask one, but here's the quick answer for you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So from now on, you tell them ceteris paribus.
Yep.
Ceteris paribus, kid. And go tell your parents to ceteris paribus too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. You're welcome for that. Hopefully I didn't ruin that word for the rest of your life. And you shouldn't say shut up to kids. When I first became a teacher in the credential program, they told me, don't be sarcastic with teenagers. Like that was the first thing they said. And I was like, oh, I'm screwed because I am so sarcastic and I joke around so much. So take that or leave that as we move forward. Remember, maybe don't be like me in some ways how I interact with kids, because I would joke with them I would say probably like ceteris paribus means shut up. I'd probably say that to kids and they laugh about it because I'd say it the right way. Yeah. But it happens a lot. It doesn't happen. It only really happens in production possibilities curve and supply and demand. And then once you get into cost curves, we're not really talking about what ifs. Then it becomes calculations. It's like the profit's 250. There's no argument about that. It's 250. There's the box of profit, which I kind of like of the class. You know what I'm saying? That part when you get there is kind of exciting. How do your students right now, if I went and sample size 3 of your students, what would they have said about your class? Okay, let's start with you, Andrew. What do you think?
Sorry, I have a child walking in here.
It's okay.
I was very open. This is the first time. So I think trial and error. I would try to make it relevant. And then I hopefully say, interesting.
Yeah. Perfect. And I think that's key that first year is to tell them, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's the key to all of education is we don't know something, because students can see right through when you're lying for sure. All right, Greta, you're up. What do you think? What would your students say?
They would probably say that it was a lot of notes. And that it was a lot more math than they maybe thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I would hope that they would say like, oh, but if you're ever confused about anything, like she does her best to find out. Like I'm like queen of if they give me a question that I don't know, I like, hey, I don't know the answer. Give me 24 hours to figure this out.
Good. Very cool.
At most I can reach out to my older sister, the economist.
You always have that in your pocket. That's not why you're asking many questions. You got someone to ask questions too.
I do.
Yeah. So, okay. What did you find? Let's do this. Let's play a game. We're gonna play a game now. I'm gonna count to 3. Make sure you're unmuted. And the count of 3, we're all gonna say what we thought was the hardest thing for students to learn. Try to get down to like one concept. Like this is all year long. Every student had a hard time with this. You guys with us? We'll see if we say the same thing. You guys ready? Pick your one. I'll give you a second. If we're all the same, I'm going to take this video and I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel. Yeah.
Are you saying the topic or the skill or?
Yeah, a skill, topic, idea. So try to boil it down to like, this is a thing I think students struggle the most with in my class. Like this is it. Yeah. You ready? Greta, just say yes or no. You ready? Okay, Andrew, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Terms of trade.
Profit maximization.
What was yours, Andrew?
Profit maximization.
Greta?
Cost curves.
Cost curves. Okay, you guys are the same unit. I'm in a different unit. I felt, for me as a learner and for my students, comparative advantage really tripped them up. And the reason I'm bringing that up now, and we'll talk about your examples in a second, is that's what you're teaching 3 days in the class. And so comparative advantage, I mean, hopefully you're comfortable with it. My kids weren't. So I always had to be really prepared for that lesson. So I've got my examples ready to go, and I'm really on top of my game on that day, because I think it's easy to be like, okay, there's one plane for two cars. Hold on. So no, is it two? Is it two planes for a car? And then you look like an idiot. It's 3 days into school, and it's tough. I don't know if it was hard for you. For me, it was always tricky. It took me time to practice to the point where I was like, oh, now I feel really comfortable with this. Now I practiced comparative advantage enough where I feel comfortable. Cost curves and profit maximizing, I think initially they look confusing, because when you look at those graphs and a kid walk in the room from the hallway and say, hey, look at these graphs, they'd be, what is this class all about? But you build up to them. I think that's great. Like you explain what what the marginal cost is. You're explaining why the average total cost looks the way that it does. Something I also learned at the AP reading is they now grade, as far as I understood from what the chief reader was saying, is they now grade to make sure your ATC hits the marginal cost at the minimum. So if kids are drawing the marginal cost curve, they can't draw it like this. I know it's gonna be hard for you to see, but they can't draw the ATC keep going down. They've got to have it go hit a minimum and then go back up. My understanding was they weren't giving points for the profit box if the kids did that, even though it has nothing to do with profit. It was just all part of the whole idea of, did you draw ATC correctly? So again, as the teacher, always draw things, really, make sure you know exactly what you're drawing, and feel so comfortable drawing it to where you're like, oh yeah, I got it. I feel super comfortable drawing that graph. It's easy to me. Cool. Are there any other questions? I don't want to draw this out unless you want to. Are there any other things that when you thought about having this meeting today, you're like, okay, I want to make sure I cover that that we haven't already covered?
What? Okay, this is
I'm sorry.
sorry. You go first.
No, no, I was just going to say I greatly appreciate the videos. Having what you have on the course, along with what we have on YouTube, has made it clarify a lot of things for me. So
good. And that's really what, I mean, that's what I've tried to do. I mean, some of the videos are a little older, but yeah, my hope is, you can tell what I do is I don't make long videos on purpose. I think there's a place and time for that. I'm not the person to make them. I'm not really a lectury person. I just try to make, quick edutainment kind of videos. Let's practice this skill. Let's practice this skill. This year, I know I'm doing macro for sure. And by the AP test, I'll have all new micro unit summary videos. They're taking forever to edit though. So that's what I was doing actually earlier today. But I'll make new videos. I don't know if I told you, but there's old videos I have on YouTube. They're like 8 years now. And I didn't want to make new ones because I'm younger and skinnier in those other videos. And I don't want to be older and fatter in my new videos, because I'm like, let's just leave those ones on YouTube. But now they're old enough, and I'm better at editing now that I'm gonna just get new videos. That's why I got the facial hair. This hides a little bit of the extra size. So don't tell any students that. But every once in a while you'll see in the comments in a video, it'll be like, man, it's really tough seeing this guy age, because I've been making videos since 2012. I think my first video was 2007. All right, Greta, what did you say? We didn't get your statement.
No, I was just going to ask, is there a good way to get kids in the right mindset for unit 5? Because I think kids in my class at least had a really tough time switching from consumer mindset to factor market mindset. Is
So
there
I think, yeah. The best way, so okay. So what you don't teach and what you probably didn't teach is the circular flow model. Did you teach that last year, Greta, at all?
I did.
Okay.
Very briefly, but yes.
Yeah. So the circular flow model, that graph, or that's not really a graph, it's more like it's a model, it explains everything in micro. But what's weird is they took it off the micro curriculum and they put it on macro's curriculum. And so it's in macro, but not micro. So I think the way I always try to connect this to students was like, okay, we've been in the product market for the last 3 units. We've been talking about supply and demand. We've been talking about cost of production, different types of markets. Now we're pulling out of the product market and we're going over to the resource market. And then, so they, at the very least, if you mention circular flow to the students before, then the students are recognizing, okay, now we've switched things up. You could do a quick round with your students. And there's several activities you can do to drive it home. There's an activity I mentioned, but I don't know, if you have time to do it. It's called the labor market activity. The one's called, what is that one called? Labor market activity. There's a push-up machine, which is more like AP level. There's another one I do called the job jungle, which you have the instructions and a video that explains that one, where students are getting a job and it's talking about, there's an aha moment I don't want to ruin for you, but the students basically are getting a job. If you started off that unit with that, that would probably help switch their brain over, because like now we're talking about this. What are the businesses doing? Well, the businesses are demanding and the individuals are supplying. And I think we keep repeating that over and over again. We've switched up now. Now it's opposite of what you're doing before. So
Okay.
what I was thinking about doing, and I could do it. I was thinking about trying to find a way to have an activity that starts every unit. Like every unit starts with an activity. Like unit one, all right, boom, we do a big hands-on simulation. Boom, we're doing a big hands-on simulation the next day. The problem with that is some things fit and some things don't fit that model. So, unit 3 has a first day activity, but there's other activities I want to do later on after they've learned something. If I had a year-long course, which none of us do, then I could do it twice. You run the activity in the beginning of the unit, and then at the end, you run it kind of a shorter version of it, and students learn more by, because they learn more stuff in the actual content. Did I answer your question about unit 5?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember,
That's helpful.
the other part of that unit 5, remember, is that there's you is the other factor. You knew you were running out of time. You knew you had to teach that fast. And because of that, you were probably cutting a few edges off. Not that you didn't do bad teaching. You did exactly what you had to do, but you were probably doing a little tighter when you taught that. And that's why the kids felt that way. Do you know what I'm saying? How did you have them cover unit 6 if you didn't cover it? Did you have them just read or watch a bunch of AP Classroom videos?
Yes. So I actually gave them the choice. I'm like, you could do AP Classroom videos, you could do Khan Academy videos, or you could do Mr. Clifford's videos. I'm like,
Good.
we've got like 3 days in class, like do what you've got to do. And I'm
Oh, you had them work into video. Okay, that's cool.
So yeah,
Well,
it was
I
like
don't
the
have that
last
many
3
Unit
days
6
before
stuff out in the world. That's another thing I need to do. I need to create more Unit 6 resources and videos. Most of my videos are where I was very, very young and very, very thin. So I've got to remake some of those as well. Yeah. I made an externalities video about a year and a half ago that covers it pretty darn well, for sure.
Yeah, I think I watched that one before, before that day,
Yeah. And
because
really
I gave kids like links to everything. Like, here's, you know how to get onto AP Classroom. Here's this playlist from Mr. Clifford. Here's, the stuff I put on our Khan Academy classroom. So
very cool. Yeah. Good. And that's really the trick, is just give students more chance to learn it. Kids need more help. They can watch more videos. I mentioned this in the last thing I'll talk about for sure. And you know this, because I want to make sure this is a universal truth. Did you find a lot of students in your classes, really smart students that excel in other classes, like other courses, actually struggled in yours? Did that happen with you guys at all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Especially teaching AP Gov. I had a lot of kids that were really great in AP Gov, but they really struggled in micro, and vice versa. I'm like, this is a completely different skill set. I totally get it. But yeah, it was interesting that happens.
I had a student, same thing. It was micro and macro. Micro, she couldn't get over a C on that class. And then we jump into macro, and then all of a sudden she's rocking A's every single time. And it's the content to some extent, but it's also how students learn. A lot of students feel comfortable learning definitions, and that's how they think of, I'm a good definition person, good memory person. And then, your memory doesn't help you finding comparative advantage in terms of trade and cost curves. Like, you have to know and do, and some students don't feel comfortable with that yet. I always felt like there was the English students, I'm great at English, and some reason they kind of struggled in the class. It's just kind of weird how it is. But you're right, AP Gov is the same situation. So the point being, going into that, now your second year, you can tell students that. Be like, listen, you're probably great students. This class is going to make you think, and it's a logic class. So you have to kind of have some street smarts in this class. And so, I'm gonna help you think. And then most importantly, make sure your grading reflects that. In other words, don't have everything all tests. And it sounds like your schools won't let you do that anyways, which is good. But you got to have something, because some scores will be down on tests because the kids are learning, they're trying their best, they're just not very logical kids. and you got to have something else that buoys up their grade, some sort of homework or other assignments that keeps this thing from being down in like a C minus or a D range. Because when A level kid starts getting D's, and this is the first time they've ever really realized, like, wow, like I am smart, but I'm smart in a different way, and now I have to think harder and differently and do something. It really like pulls the class down, and you can feel that sometimes. And so make sure, look, don't worry about your grade. We're going to get you there. We're going to practice this stuff, and then students will eventually get to that point where their grade matches kind of like their effort level in class. I don't know if you had problems with that. It's one of the biggest problems in AP is students, being too much focused on their grade and not on their learning, and then things start to tumble down. If students feel like you're not being fair with your grading, but you're saying I really want to be, I want to hold you to a higher standard, and the students like we don't want a higher standard, and there's like this push back and forth. So I talk a lot of strategies in the workshop about that, about how important it is just to practice. I mean, I probably said 100 times, you got to make it for practice, make it for practice, make it for practice. Did you guys experience that a lot this year, making things for practice and feeling like students didn't get it, but by the time the test came around, they did? Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. I always tell myself it's a rule of 3. If I explain something to you and you don't know how to do it, that's okay. Like it's not your fault. If I give it to you again, same exact skill, and you can't do it, still all accept responsibility. I didn't explain it enough. I didn't give you enough time. By the 3rd time, though, I can start making it for a grade. The real problems happen with teachers who, watch a video, come to class. Now we're doing it for points. Then it's like those kids like, well, I don't know this yet. And then they, like I said, can pull the class down. So I always have at least 2 practice rounds before I ever do anything for points. We'll grade these ones. Like, well, I'll give you something and we'll grade it, but it's not going to be for points in the grade book. And if it is, it's for participation. So I think that the rule of 3 is really good when it comes to motivating students and feeling like, okay, we're getting it enough and we're being assessed properly. What's funny is one of these days I could write a book called The Rule of 3 and probably make $1 million. You know how those education books come out and it's just like logic. Everyone does it, but there's a book that talks about it. You're like, oh, ooh, this is something like, do we all do that? Like every book I've ever seen on education, it's always explaining some brand new thing that's amazing that I'm like, every good teacher does that. Like, how are you making money off this book? Maybe you should be excited in your classroom. Wow, you made a book about being excited with students. Okay, congratulations. I'm obviously in the wrong market. Okay, I think, first of all, I hope this was worth your time. I put my heart and soul into the online course. I spent my whole summer was, if you can tell, I went from not having a beard to having a beard slowly in those videos. And, I want you to feel like you're getting exactly what your school district paid for. If you have any questions, keep me up to date. Especially in October, we do another live session, but even between now and then, you've got my email me. Hey, here's a question my kids had. Send any texts out to me. If just give me something and I'll help your students out. I want you to think of me as not as this, oh, there's a guy on YouTube. I want you to think like, this is the guy who's helping me. He's my friend. He's my buddy. He's hooking me up. I want you to feel that way. And I think it's better than there's a guy in this course who teaches it. That's why I wanted these live sessions. Is there anything else we need to cover? So I really appreciate you guys coming by. Next time I will see you will be in October, but the next time you'll see me, I'm going to post more videos. If I make any new activities, I'll post videos, and anything new that I make between now and October, I'll put inside the course inside that unit. So I'm going to put the new worksheet I made for the push-up machine in there, and I'm going to put more stuff in there as time goes on. So you'll be completely up to date with all the new stuff I'm making this year. Okay. Okay. Greta, Andrew, it was great working with you guys, talking to you. All right. You have a good one.
Thanks. You too.